And I will introduce our wonderful expert today, Rupal Parikh, Esquire. She is a seasoned immigration attorney with over 20 years of experience in the field. She commenced her legal career at the Nationality Service Center in Philadelphia, where she served as a staff attorney. In this capacity, Ms. Parikh managed a diverse caseload encompassing asylum, removal, naturalization, and family-based adjustments of status. In recognition of her exceptional work, she was awarded the prestigious Independence Foundation Fellowship in her second year, which provided her the opportunity to represent unaccompanied minors at the Berks County Detention Center. Subsequently, Ms. Parikh transitioned to a solo practice in Bergen County, New Jersey, where she refined her skills in business immigration law. In 2006, she founded her own firm specializing in immigration and nationality law, and currently serves as the managing attorney, leading a dedicated team of associates and support staff. In addition to her practice, Ms. Parikh is committed to community service, offering her legal expertise through various volunteer initiatives, including radio programming and local events. Ms. Parikh has shifted her focus over the years to specialize in business immigration, providing legal counsel to small business owners, mid-sized companies, large corporations, and healthcare institutions seeking to recruit and retain foreign talent. Her areas of expertise include H-1B, PERM, L-1, EB-1C, NIW, EB-5, and H-2B visas. The firm also maintains a strong practice in family-based immigration, offering comprehensive services that include green cards, naturalization, removal proceedings, asylum applications, consular processing, and waivers. And with that, I just only have to add our thanks to Rupal, one of the busiest people in town right now, for taking the time to put together a really thoughtful and detailed presentation for us, and for being here today to go over it and answer everyone's questions. So thank you, Rupal.
Thank you, Amber. And for all of you who are here today, I am happy to, provide any information that I can. And we do have a very, I think, as Amber said, we have a lot of information to get through today. So let's get started. I am going to share. It says to send a request, Amber, multiple presenters for sharing the screen. I think there's a couple people sharing. Just a second, guys. I think I've got this. All right. Amber, is that up? Can we see it?
Looks good.
Looks good. Okay. All right, welcome everybody. So we're here, as to talk about what's happening in immigration law today. We're going to talk about what we've learned so far and how we can support our most vulnerable population. Our agenda for the day is to, understand what the recent changes in immigration law has been. We're going to do a Know Your Rights presentation for the undocumented population, along with the allies who are here today on this call. We have a take action, how you could take action, and then we'll provide you with some resources. So, I know you guys have all been watching the news. There have been a slew of immigration orders that have been dedicated just to immigration. And these executive orders by the administration, what they represent is a comprehensive effort by this administration to reshape U.S. immigration policy. And their focus is on stricter enforcement and reducing avenues for legal immigration. Most of these policies that they've put into place have prompted legal challenges, and obviously there's widespread debate throughout the country regarding what their implications are for human rights and what our values are as a nation and as a people of this country. So one of the first executive orders that President Trump signed is called Protecting the American People Against Invasion. I mean, just giving it that name, right, is a little bit scary. Hold on just a second. I think I lost my slides. Are the slides still up, Amber?
No, can you try stopping and starting again?
To them. What do you see?
It says click to exit full screen.
Okay.
Try presenting again.
All right. So we're back. Protecting the American people against invasion. So this order, this executive order, its aim is to strengthen immigration enforcement, right? What they're trying to do, there's several different things that make up this executive order. One, they want to expand the use of expedited removal. So expedited removal is a thing that allows for rapid deportation of individuals without a court hearing, which just as I say that, should raise some bells because we do have a process in place, a due process, that people who are in this country are entitled to. And by doing expedited removal, that basically gets rid of that process. Um, the executive order also aims to deny federal funding to sanctuary jurisdictions that don't cooperate with federal immigration authorities. A lot of townships in the state of New Jersey are sanctuary cities. So this is going to be something that's going to impact our state directly. They also want to impose criminal and civil penalties on immigrants who fail to register as undocumented. Now, this is not new. This has been something on the books for a really long time. It's just that there's never been enforcement around it. But now they want to start getting people who are undocumented who are in this country to register with like a national registry system. I haven't heard too much about that right now. That's going to be up and running, but we don't know what's coming tomorrow, much less next week or the next couple of months. Increasing the hiring of immigration and customs enforcement and CBP officers. So that's something every administration tries to do and usually does. This is pretty normal. Restricting access to public benefits for undocumented immigrants. Again, undocumented immigrants are not cannot avail themselves of any federal benefits. But putting this in this executive order, what it does is it creates fear in people who might be entitled to benefits, or their children might be entitled to benefits if they're undocumented, but they have a U.S. citizen child from applying for anything. They want to expand what's called 287G agreements, which allow local law enforcement to collaborate with federal immigration authorities. There are plenty of police departments across the country who have signed this 287G agreement to cooperate with federal immigration authorities. And then they want to enhance federal criminal prosecutions for immigration related offenses. One thing to remember is that immigration is civil. So you violate immigration laws, it's a civil crime, civil penalty, not a criminal penalty. But now they want to expand that into some sort of criminal offense. We're waiting to see what they come out with that. Nothing yet. Let's see. Amber, I'm trying to move it to the, there we go. So, you know, to go into the sanctuary jurisdictions and something that directly impacts us here in New Jersey, the Trump administration moved just yesterday to file a lawsuit against the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois, challenging their sanctuary jurisdiction laws. And challenging their policies. The Trump administration argued that these local laws protecting folks impede federal immigration enforcement, right? And that they are unconstitutional. Now, that is, something that we need to wait and see because it's going to play out in the courts. But it just shows you that this is a broader initiative to increase deportations, to get the local police departments involved. And they're going after jurisdictions they believe are harboring these undocumented immigrants. So this is a significant escalation by the administration to challenge these sanctuary cities. Another executive order protecting the meaning and value of American citizenship. You guys have probably heard a lot about this because it's been in the media quite a bit, which is the birthright citizenship, right? So the Constitution basically provides that anyone who's born in the United States, regardless of who your parents are, where they've come from, what their status is a United States citizen. And what this executive order aims to do is to take away that right to children born here in the United States. And it's saying that if you are here, say as a student or here on a temporary work visa, and you've been working here for 5 years, 6 years, you have a child, that child will not be granted U.S. citizenship in any which way or form. So, there, as soon as this executive order came out, the ACLU and other partners filed a lawsuit. They were ready. They were ready for this one. And just 2 days ago, a U.S. District Judge in Maryland issued a nationwide preliminary injunction, basically stopping this from going into effect. And it states, and the judge said that this order conflicts with the 14th Amendment and it contradicts over 100 years of Supreme Court precedent. So hopefully, for now, this is going to be stop in its track, but we believe as immigration attorneys that this is going to go all the way up to the Supreme Court for review. So we'll see what happens on that. Another executive order, securing our borders. So this has had the most direct impact, especially on the asylum and the undocumented and vulnerable population that were coming in across the border. So what the administration has done is they have reinstated this policy that they put into place under the first Trump administration, which is called Remain in Mexico. The official name of it is the Migrant Protection Protocols, right? They've couched it in terms of we're protecting the migrant population. But what it does is those folks who are coming into our southern border and seeking asylum in this country are asked to wait in Mexico while their immigration cases in the U.S. are being processed. I mean, what happened last time was that there were approximately 70,000 asylum seekers that were forced to remain in Mexico pending their hearings. And this created all kinds of issues. They were in camps, they were preyed upon by cartels. It wasn't really a great situation, and it kind of goes against our values as a country in providing a safe haven for, those who are seeking our protection, our country's protection. Another thing that this executive order did is it ended the catch and release policy. So there was a policy in place that said officers who are enforcing our immigration laws, if they come across, say, a family or even individuals who are undocumented, they would do a preliminary review to see if they are dangerous to our country. And if they're not, then the officer had the discretion to determine whether or not these folks should be detained. That is now over. So the idea is if you are a officer who's enforcing immigration laws and you come across individuals, they have to be put into mandatory detention. No case by case based discretion, whether it's families, whether it's children, pregnant women, it doesn't matter. Everyone is supposed to be put into detention while they wait out whatever process they're going to go through. Um, Under the Biden administration, there was a app called the CBC One app, and what it did is it allowed folks to schedule appointments for their asylum hearings, to present documentation, to in furtherance of their claims, and that has now been ended. So, the fallout from that has been there were people who had already scheduled this went into effect, and people who'd been scheduled for appointments, what have you, all of it done over. So, those folks who had relied on this were harmed, obviously, by this executive order. And another big thing is terminating humanitarian parole programs. The government of the United States has for as long as I can remember, has had in place parole programs which allow people from countries that are, that have political violence or that have been impacted by natural disasters, who cannot return to their countries or need to get out for some sort of safety security reason. Our country has provided them a safe space to live here temporarily, until their countries can rebound, and put things back in order. This administration seeks to get rid of those parole programs, especially ones that were recently done under the Biden administration that impacted Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans. Those are all halted. So what the Biden administration had done was had put in a program which allowed families to wait out their immigration processes together. So they were paroling folks from these countries into the United States, especially if an immigrant visa application had been filed for them and their cases were coming up pretty soon for adjudication. They were saying, hey, this is taking quite a long time. If the US petitioner or the US sponsor could prove to the government that they could support them while they were here, there was a process put into place that the family member could enter the United States now and then wait for their visas while they're, with their families. All of that done and over, definitely not allowed. Now, there were programs for Ukrainians and Afghans. These are not have been directly impacted yet, but the administration has definitely stated that they want to end all programs relating to humanitarian parole. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. Another executive order is that, President Trump has declared a national emergency at the southern border. So what this allows him to do is to use, combination of the Constitution and the National Emergencies Act to mobilize our military personnel, and the budgetary resources that the military has to execute mass deportations and send the military down to the border. Now, this is definitely being challenged, but I'm not sure how that's going to go. I mean, we've always, even under the Biden administration, military personnel were at the border, but they were not engaging in military actions, right? They were there in a supporting role to ICE. Now, the Department of Defense has been ordered to support any sort of enforcement efforts that are undertaken by the Department of Homeland Security, and they've been ordered to devote their resources to create barriers, so the wall at the border, to also assist with apprehending people crossing the border, to increase detention capacity, and any other operations. And um, this order, what it also tries to do is they want to authorize drone and other surveillance um, mechanisms, but by waiving the regulations that surround them. So it's basically having unfettered power to secure our border by declaring this national emergency. Um, Next one, realigning the United States refugee admission programs. This is something Trump did in his first administration. And what he did then was he limited the number of refugees that could enter the United States. Usually, the president has the power to set the number of refugees the government will take in. And basically, what he's done is he's like, forget that. We're just suspending it. They've suspended the whole program indefinitely. Um, and how did he have the power to do this? So he basically said it was detrimental to U.S. interests. Now, Department of State and Department of Homeland Security do have um, still have the power to admit refugees on a case-by-case basis. However, there's more stringent vetting requirements that are going to be applied to them. So, I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen with this, but they've also increased the powers of the states and local jurisdictions to give them a role in determining where these refugees are going to be placed. Now, if there's no one coming in or they're, being vetted more than they already are, I don't know if it's really going to matter whether the states are going to have this power or not. So we're waiting to find out how this is going to shake out. The DOS and DHS has been given 90 days to, provide recommendations on whether this program will resume or not. As of January 22nd, 2025, refugees who had already been vetted, who had already been cleared to come into this program, they've been canceled. All of those flights, all of those folks being allowed to come in has all gone, especially for the 1,600 Afghans who assisted America's war efforts, which is pretty sad, right? They were promised a safe haven in the United States, and the administration just has taken that away. One of the things that I wanted to speak about with the military powers, right? Trump has the Trump administration has basically said that they want to detain undocumented immigrants in Guantanamo Bay. So it falls under an executive order. So what they want to do is they want to increase the capacity. So Guantanamo Bay, as we all know, right, is a military base that houses criminals. Um, Most recently, the people that were housed there were people that were associated with the 9/11 terrorist attack. Now they want to increase the capacity there to house 30,000 criminal undocumented immigrants. And, this administration is defining criminal as someone who has just been accused, not necessarily convicted. So, in most of our day-to-days, the way we understand someone who's a criminal is someone who's actually been convicted, not just accused of a crime, right? You're innocent until you're proven guilty, but this administration has really expanded the definition of criminals. So obviously, this is going to be challenged because there's a lot of people out there who do believe that this is a violation of the Constitution and international human rights standards. So we'll see what happens, and it is in effect. And I think the work has already started on expanding the facility, but we, hope that this will be paused. Um, Increase in deportation efforts. This is also something that has made the news. There have been already expanded deportation flights. The country of Guatemala has already agreed to accept 40% more deportation flights. And they're willing to take people who are deportees of various nationalities, not just Guatemalans, which creates a whole nother um, morass of legal challenges because obviously you want to send people back to the country where they're from, uh, not to a country that's just willing to accept them. And this is very interesting is that they want to start using, and they already have started using military craft for deportations, right? Which there are rules and regulations that say how and when a military plane can fly into another nation states. There are processes and requirements that the military has to go through. The administration said, we don't care. This is how we're sending them out. So basically, their purpose is to rapidly detain and expel undocumented migrants that are in urban areas as soon as possible, right? And they're doing it. So those have been the executive orders that are, I think, pretty relevant and impact all of us and impact our, the communities in which we live. So any questions on that, please put them in the chat. We will get to them after the presentation is over. And so now we're going to talk about Know Your Rights with ICE. This is targeted towards the people who may be on this call, who may be undocumented or know someone who is, right? So what do you do when you encounter ICE? So the basic rights are anyone and everyone that's living in the United States, regardless of your citizenship status, you have certain basic rights under the US Constitution. Number one, you have a right to remain silent, right? So um, you also have the right to speak to a lawyer. You have the right to not say anything about where you were born, how you entered the US. Um, and what we suggest for a lot of folks in the undocumented space, is to carry a Know Your Rights card. You can always show them. And a lot of times what I see is that I have clients who don't necessarily speak the language so well. And fear determines a lot of this, especially, when you're confronted with an ICE agent that's all decked out in riot gear with guns and batons and what have you. So, people don't necessarily remember. So it's always good to have a Know Your Rights card that you can present to them that says, listen, I have the right to remain silent and I have the right to a lawyer. If it is possible, you carry, a lot of people come to me and they ask me, they say, Rupal, I'm in the process, but I'm not documented yet. Am I at risk? You can carry some of the paperwork with you to show them, hey, listen, I'm in the process. Now, another right is you have the right to take photos and videos of the raid. You can also take notes on what happened, right? So a lot of questions I get is, can ICE, if they were to come to my house, can they enter my home? So, they can't. They need to have a judicial warrant in order for ICE to enter, whether it's your home, whether it is a church, a school, or any other private location. If they're coming to do a raid, they need to have a judicial warrant, and that warrant needs to be signed by a judge. We have heard instances of when ICE officers will present themselves as local police. We just want to talk to you about a crime that happened in the area, and then they come barging in. Um, you have to let everyone know that they do not have to open the door for ICE. Even if they say they're police officers, you can say, hey, slide your identification or slide your paperwork through the mail slot or, hold it up. I can look at it through a window. But again, you do not have to open the door to let them in. Okay. And this is a screenshot of what a judicial warrant looks like, and there should be a signature of the immigration official, and there should absolutely be a signature of a judge who has authorized this raid. Um, Again, what do you do if ICE is at your door? Don't open it. Again, officers may falsely claim to be police. Uh, you can call your hotline, rapid response hotline, and we will share some resources afterwards that will show you where and how you can call. Also, just be aware, right? I tell people be aware of what's happening around you. You can look for unusual cars that are just stopped on the street. Sometimes they use unmarked cars, usually US made cars, right? So ICE waits for people to leave for work to arrest them. But this is not to say do not leave for work. Do not continue living your life. There's been a lot of fear around that. And I think that's really what this administration's goal is to scare folks into self-deporting and just going home because the fear just gets too much to them for them. One thing, you know, I like to tell my clients is that usually what we've seen, these ICE raids, first and foremost, are not new, right? This has been ongoing for as long as I've been practicing and longer, because it is part of our immigration and customs enforcement. Um, So it is their job to go out and find undocumented. The priorities have been always the same because there are approximately 14 million to 18 million undocumented population in this country. The priority has always been for most administrations to get the ones that have been convicted of crimes. So usually ICE officers know, and that's who they're targeting. Now, do other people get caught up in these raids? Yes, they do. And that's where, the population needs to be more aware, needs to just know their rights, obviously. But all of that just to say, please don't be scared to go on living your life in the way you know, and, find a way to try to legalize your status if you can. Um, if for some reason you are arrested outside of your home, because ICE does not need a judicial warrant outside of your home, you have the right to not answer any questions. And you have the right to ask to speak to your attorney, right? So you don't have to say, um, you know, I'm undocumented. This is where I'm from. You don't have to say anything. And one big important thing that I don't think shows up anywhere is please, don't carry your passports around with you, right? People think, oh, I can carry my passport around with me as a form of identification. Do not do that, because if you are one of those vulnerable populations, giving when ICE arrests you, they will take everything from you, right? And a passport allows them to process your removal from the United States very, very quickly. Whereas if it's not on you, they have to go through a whole process to get permission from your country to take you back. So that's just a little side there. For those who are checking in with ICE already, who are already in the system and in the process, we are hearing that they are detaining people when they do go for check-ins, but it's not across the board. Obviously, the suggestion is to, speak to your family, your attorney, and your local network before you have to go for the check-in. Prepare your loved ones that can help you fight your deportation efforts. Write down or memorize your important phone numbers, including your attorney's number or your legal organization that's helping you, and a family or friend who can be someone that you can contact. You can also bring someone with you to check in. Give them your keys, your wallet, your phone, and your passport before you go in to check in with ICE. And if you feel like they're trying to detain you, the person that you've gone with should immediately call your attorney, um, who can figure out what the next steps are. This is a concern for a lot of people. So, we've been hearing stories, and I have clients who are telling me, I haven't gone to work. I'm so afraid they're going to come into my workplace. What do I do? So if you work in a public place, unless you work in a public place, ICE cannot enter your workplace without a judicial warrant or permission from your employer. If they don't have a warrant, then you have the right to ask them to leave. Now, if they come in by force, obviously don't run. Try to stay calm, because if you start running, they can use that as a reason to arrest you. Um, you have to tell them you don't consent to a search. You, if you can, you try to write down which agents were there, what their badge numbers are. Not always possible to do that. Maybe you can take a photo. If you can, document any violence or abuse. Try to document the details of the search and the persons or property taken. Okay, because there are organizations that are compiling this information. Hopefully, in order to be able to bring a lawsuit to stop these forceful raids that are illegal. So how can you help, right? How can you support immigrants during ICE encounters? Legal observation is one, right? Document interactions without interfering. Record videos if you feel that it's safe to do so. Try to know the law, which is what you guys are all doing today, and familiarize yourself with the local sanctuary policies in the township that you're in, and offer referrals to individuals to reputable legal aid organization or private attorneys. You can also create a safe space, right? Encourage employers to know and uphold immigrant workers' rights. I'm sure all of us out there know some business owner, restaurant owner, speak to them. Open, advocate for the immigrant community, and encourage the employers to know that they do not have to give permission to ICE to enter the workplace without a warrant, right? If someone shows up at the door, you tell them, nope, can't come in, need a warrant. Community shelters, establish sanctuaries where immigrants can find temporary refuge. This can be done obviously on a local level. And legal clinics host workshops offering legal assistance and document preparation. There are plenty of private attorneys and legal aid organizations who can provide resources to help put this into place into your communities. So, share the know your rights information, right? With your family, with your employer, your community. There are know your rights cards. You can find these directly by doing a Google search. You can find them in all languages translated at this point. And give them out during your religious services, any community events, what have you, so people are informed and know what their rights are. Um, and for, us as allies, right? What else can we do? We can contact our legislators. We can call and ask them to support the Immigrant Trust Act. Try to get your employer or your union or your school district, your town, to issue some sort of statement of support for undocumented immigrants. Contact the people who are running for office, ask them to support this Immigrant Trust Act, and ask them to oppose the expansion of for-profit immigration detention here in New Jersey, and to provide defense work for our immigrant communities by providing resources and funding to organizations that are active in the community. call your House of Representatives, call your senators. We have a number here for the Congressional Switchboard, 202-224-3121. You can call, ask for your specific representative or senator, leave a message for them. They do read these. They do get them. There's someone who's going to tally up, pro-immigration or anti-immigration calls, and they will pass this along to your representative or your senator. And it's good for them to hear your voice, to know what their constituents are thinking. Stay connected, obviously, support community events. There's one coming up tomorrow on February 8th at the corner of Passaic Avenue and Paulison, where there are going to be hundreds of immigrant families and community members protesting the attacks on the immigrant community and all of these executive orders. So it'd be great. You guys can show up. Be terrific. Terrific. AAPI has what's called the Activate Network. So be a part of that, join that, join the network. There is a delegation day, Immigrant Trust Delegation Day on February 18th. And you don't have to be an AAPI member to join in that. And if you as a community have other ideas, you can email us at advocacy@aapinewjersey.org, or you can give us a call at 973-298-0966. Please share your ideas with us, because anything we can do in this space, we're open to. Some legal resources that you guys can take away. There are nonprofit organizations that provide low-cost help. You can look for those at immigrationlawhelp.org. Immigration courts have a list of lawyers and organizations that provide free or low-cost legal services, and you can look that up at justice.gov EOIR. There is on Find Legal Help, there's a search engine that allows you to type a zip code, and then you're given a list of legal services near you. So this would be good to give to folks in the community that you might be residing in, and just find out which attorneys, which organizations in your particular area of the state are available, and provide that as a direct resource to your folks. And the National Immigration Project obviously also has an online tool that you can use to find an attorney near you. One of the biggest things I see in the communities that are vulnerable is immigration fraud. And there just aren't enough resources that the state has to combat this. So what starts out as an undocumented person speaking to their neighbor or speaking to a family member saying, hey, I need to apply for this, or I need to legalize my status. And they're like, oh yeah, I know someone down the street who's a travel agent, or a notario, or someone who's filling out immigration forms. I think what a lot of people who are, in these vulnerable situations don't understand how complex immigration really is. And a lot of them do believe it's just filling out application forms. So they're like, oh yeah, I go to the guy down the street who will, fill out a work permit application for me. But what they don't realize, that if it was that easy to get a work permit in this country, everybody would have a work permit, right? Like, work permits are not something that's just given out. There's a process. So in order to get a work permit, here, an example is, in order to get a work permit, you have to fill out an application for asylum. But the folks who are engaging in this fraud or just filling out applications don't realize that putting forth a fraudulent asylum case in order to get that work permit is creating a host of problems for the person who, they're actually filling out these forms for. So, they're also promising green cards and, other things if you pay sometimes a little bit of money, sometimes a whole lot of money, but they're really scams. We should really try to corral the community and make them understand there are organizations who do engage in work that is related to immigration, who will know the larger context of immigration law in which these folks can find a way to legalize their status, not just someone who's going to help them fill out a form, right? And one thing I guess I always tell everybody, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So keep that in mind, pass that along. Additional resources, AAPI has a immigrants' rights resource hub. There is a Know Your Rights app put out by NAKASEC. There are resources for what to do if immigration comes to your workplace. The NILC has a really great guide for employers. Um, there's also guidance for nonprofits regarding non-immigration enforcement. Again, Know Your Rights cards, get those printed in languages, different languages. And again, if you're still not sure and you're looking for help, please email us or call us at the email and the phone number that we provided earlier. And now I'll open it up for questions. If anybody has any questions, please let me know. Let me see. Amber, is there anything in the chat?
Yep. Yep. Yeah. So starting with some questions from the chat, Swati says there are messages and news out there that certain spaces are open for ICE to raid, like churches, schools, and hospitals. Can you clarify whether even for those spaces, warrants are required?
Warrants are required for every single place, whether it's churches, whether it's schools, whether it's hospitals, what have you. They need to have a warrant signed because they're looking for, a specific target. Say they've identified someone who is a criminal alien that they're trying to go after, and they know that this person is in this particular church. They need a warrant to do that. However, if that person comes out of the church and they get them, then obviously they don't need that warrant. But yes, so I think by saying, and maybe I'm being naive here or hopeful, more like it is, I don't believe those raids are necessarily going to happen. I think it's create a fear tactic. Telling people, listen, your churches, your schools, your hospitals are not safe. We're coming after you wherever you are. I think that might be a lot of rhetoric, but again, we'll wait and see how this goes, right? But no, they do need a warrant to enter those spots.
Thank you. And another attendee asks, they've printed thousands of Know Your Rights reg cards in English, Spanish, and Creole. Can you suggest ways we can distribute these to those who may be impacted and most vulnerable?
Absolutely. I mean, there are, pockets, right? Especially here in New Jersey, we know where the community hotspots are. I can tell you West Orange, East Orange, huge Haitian community there. Spanish, at least in North Jersey, right? And for those of you that are spread throughout New Jersey, will know where the community centers are. Um, Churches are an amazing, amazing place to go. I call up the churches and say, hey, listen, we've printed out these Know Your Rights cards. Can you just put them out so people take them? I mean, one thing that I've experienced is that most people in these communities, they don't talk to each other to let them, other people know what their status is. It's something that's very hidden and personal. So, you can't just go out and try to identify these people or just hand out cards, right? Maybe leave them in community centers and churches and places where they gather so they can take them as they need.
Another question that's more specific but gets at people's fear of engaging with our system at all right now is someone asking about what happens to couples who start a green card process where one is a US citizen, the other is undocumented. Are they, ICE accessing the database of these applications? Would you even advise going through the green card process right now?
I would say yes. It is very imperative that you get into a process. If there is something available to you or you don't know what's available to you, talk to an attorney, talk to a legal aid organization, talk to someone to find out what's available to you under the processes that we have in place right now. Yes, get into a process because that provides protection to you, right? They cannot deport you or remove you from this country if you are in the system going through a process. So you have it, in your example, Amber, that you provided, if you're a US citizen married to an undocumented person, um, start the process, apply for them, right? They will not be removed until that process is completed. Not saying they're not going to end up in removal proceedings, and have to go and present themselves to the immigration court, but until all of the processing is resolved, and if it's resolved negatively, obviously the removal proceedings will start, but they will have a chance in front of the immigration judge to apply for whatever relief they have possible. And was there a piece of that question I did not answer?
No, no, that was great. Thank you. And also from the chat, are sanctuary city proclamations that were passed in 2018 still valid, or would it be helpful to review and revive them?
It depends on, I guess that's going to depend upon each jurisdiction that did pass a sanctuary policy. I think it's always good to go back and look and see if they need to be revised. But yes, they are still valid, absolutely valid, right? So federal immigration enforcement is, again, it's a federal thing, not at a state level, not at a local level. So what sanctuary cities or townships have done, they're saying, we are not that they can't allow federal immigration authorities to come into their sanctuary cities, but what it means is the police, um, their local law enforcement does not have to cooperate with the immigration enforcement that is being undertaken by the federal government.
Thank you. And I'll keep reading from the chat. If you'd like to ask your question verbally, please feel free to raise your hand. Are all outside spaces, such as state parks, zoos, farmers markets, considered open to ICE, or would they need a warrant to search an outdoor space that has an entrance or ticket booth?
I think if it's considered to be an outside space, it is open to ICE and they do not need a warrant.
Thank you. And also from the chat, do individual New Jersey municipalities police forces have the option to collaborate with ICE more than others?
They absolutely do. It's an agreement that they get into with ICE under 287G. And if they've wanted to, and there are jurisdictions all over this country who have signed agreements with federal immigration enforcement to help them out in whatever situations, right? So sometimes it's the local police who are being activated to go out and catch um, undocumented folks in certain jurisdictions. Yes.
Right. And in New Jersey, we do have the Immigrant Trust Directive, which is from our state attorney general directing local law enforcement not to refer people to ICE and, except for certain serious categories of crimes. But that is something that there could be varying levels of understanding of and sort of implementation of by police department, and would also could also go away in the next administration, which is why we're advocating for the Immigrant Trust Act. Um, yeah, Kieran, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify regarding the warrants and some of the like quote unquote like private spaces, but they're open to the public, like a church. So in our community, we have to go to the RA and like anyone can come in. If somebody were to just come in, I know you said they need a warrant. I'm just curious what that would look like. Would they maybe try to find the person to give the warrant to? Could could they not come in because it's obvious it's a private space? Would we have to like put some sort of designation indicating that it is a private space, like state that explicitly? I'm just curious. I just wanted to get a little bit more clarification there.
I guess I'm trying to visualize the space that you're talking about, right? So it's a church with an outdoor space.
No, it's a church where anyone, like typically anyone can come in, right? Where
Okay.
they don't have anybody like at the door greeting anybody. Like it's just people come in and out all the time.
Right. So I mean, say you have ICE standing at the door of the church and they don't have a warrant. We'd go back to what we stated in the Know Your Rights presentation. You don't have to let them in, right? I mean, yes, they can walk in, but can they undertake an immigration enforcement within the church if they just walked in without a judicial warrant? No, they cannot. That would be in violation. Um, that would be a pretty major violation. Now, um, how this is going to go under this administration, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of overreach by ICE, right? They've just been waiting to be unleashed. So these executive orders kind of do that. And I think we're going to see a lot of different things. But from a legal standpoint, do they have the right to enter the church and undertake enforcement activities without a judicial warrant? They do not.
They could technically come in, but they really
I didn't catch that.
they could come in because it's the public space. They couldn't. There's no enforcement action they could actually execute in that space because it's a private space, and they would need a warrant, right?
Correct. So, I mean, you're coming in and out. So, yes, they can enter the space. Maybe they're entering as a private citizen, right? Maybe they're doing undercover work. Maybe they're looking for someone, but if they don't execute anything within the space, that's okay. Right? There are no laws anywhere. There are no regulations that says, law enforcement or federal immigration enforcement can't enter these spaces. It's about what they're going to do after they enter. Are they trying to conduct a raid? Um, are they trying to find a criminal alien? What's their purpose in being there? And if it is for enforcement purposes, then they absolutely need a warrant that's been signed by a judge.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And I know we're at one. We do have a few more questions that have come in. So everyone, thank you for joining. Feel free to hop off. Rupal, if you do have a few more minutes to give us,
Sure. Yeah.
but let us know if you need to get off. So what are the pros and cons, the risks, if any, of a municipality passing a sanctuary city proclamation?
So from what I've heard so far is that the administration is going to cut funding. What this is, or you're going to get sued, just like they did against Chicago. Now, smaller municipalities, I think where the biggest impact is going to be is if the municipality receives federal funding, say for transportation, say for infrastructure. This administration is really going to try to expand their powers to limit the funds that are coming in or put conditions on the funds that we receive from the federal government for different things. So there's a high possibility that something like that could happen. It's already been threatened. Now, whether it's legal or not, that's a whole nother question, right? So I'm sure there's going to be quite a number of legal challenges for them to try to, defund some of the programs that the federal government funds for all townships and cities throughout the nation.
Thank you. Do you think that ICE will show up at schools? We understand that judicial warrant would be needed to arrest someone there, but from your perspective, do you think this administration will put energy into trying to obtain warrants to arrest students?
I really don't. I don't think that there are enough resources. And unless it is a student who has been convicted of a, pretty egregious criminal offense, I think maybe in that situation they might. But I highly doubt it. I highly doubt that that's going to happen. But again, some people would say I'm just being hopeful.
Another school-related question from a teacher. In 2024, New Jersey passed a law mandating that students at public schools fill out FAFSA, the financial aid application. Should undocumented students, dreamers, or those with undocumented family members have concerns about filling out these forms?
To fill out a FAFSA as an elementary school?
Well, no, like a graduating high schooler applying for college financial aid.
Right. So, I mean, I don't know how to answer that question directly because I don't know as much about it. However, I can tell you right now that the tax service, so the IRS does not share information. Security, Social Security doesn't share information with ICE. So the things that, some of the agencies that you would think would share information are not sharing information. So I don't believe that FAFSA, Department of Education, is sharing information with ICE. Not yet, anyway. So I wouldn't worry so much about completing the FAFSA.
Thank you. Another privacy-related question, this time from a healthcare worker who's received message from undocumented patients concerned about their status and the safety of coming in, even for medically necessary treatments. Could
Mhm.
HIPAA or anything else be used as a reason to deny law enforcement information about patients?
Absolutely. Right. I mean, that is your first line of defense. Again, those privacy safeguards that have been placed that are there for all of us, whether we're undocumented or documented, um, none of those have been harmed at this point. They have not been attacked, and there has not been anything that I've heard that's planning on attacking the healthcare system in that way in our privacy concerns and protections. So as of this particular moment, nothing to worry about there. And please, please, please tell your, vulnerable populations do come in to get the health care. Again, they've created this climate of massive fear, and people are just scared and in hiding. And like your person said here, you know, people are not coming in to get their health care because they're afraid they're going to be picked up. This is not happening. There are not enough resources for immigration to go out and stand outside of all the hospitals, to stand outside of the clinics, the schools, looking for undocumented people. That is not happening, and it has not happened. And I'll tell you this, in the 3 weeks that this administration has been in, power, um, the raids that they spoke about, the mass deportations, I have not seen that, right? There have been a few raids, but again, they were within the scope of what enforcement has already been happening, was happening under the Biden administration, what happened under the Obama administration. So it isn't anything out of the ordinary. It's a lot of rhetoric because, again, there just isn't enough resources to go and, really go into all of these communities and do a mass deportation effort.
Yeah, I think they are relying a lot on our anticipatory compliance and on spreading as much fear as they can.
Right. But the fear there, Amber, is so huge in all of these communities. And I think that's one of the biggest messages we as allies can get out to them. Be aware, but don't be so scared that it prevents you from just continuing on with your life, right? I mean, it's easier said from this perspective than from their perspective. But I tell all of my clients, we've been getting so many calls, people that are scared, and I keep telling them, stop listening, turn off all of this rhetoric that's going on. People are amplifying some of these things that the administration said they would like to do, but it's not really happening on the ground to the extent that they're talking about it. And I think that's where the disconnect comes in, and people don't realize, wait, hey, let me look around and see, oh, nothing's really happening, right?
Yeah, and I think there's been also been an increase in just lots of unconfirmed reports of ICE officers popping up everywhere, even in, sensitive places like schools and churches, when there are actually steps you should take before you share information like that
Right.
online and cause panic in your community. So maybe in a future session we will address
Yeah, we'll
that.
talk about that.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
I do have one last question. If anyone else has any questions, now's the time. But the last one I have right now is should other TPS, temporary protected status holders, be concerned after the decision to revoke Venezuelan TPS status?
I really can't answer that, but from what I've seen, yes, you should be concerned. You should speak with someone to find out what other avenues you may have to legalize, just to sort of prepare yourself in case TPS is canceled, suspended, revoked for any of the vulnerable populations that we, protect now under that program.
Thank you. Okay, last question. Um, I'm hearing of restaurants and other local businesses frequented by undocumented immigrants losing business due to fears of ICE coming in to search for persons to detain. What rights do individuals have in these spaces, and what rights do the business owners have in protecting their customers?
Again, the employer would have to give, or the employer or the proprietor of the business would have to give ICE permission verbally to say, sure, you can come in and you can raid my spot. You can talk to the people here. So you have to get out there in your communities, let folks know that they do not have to give them permission, and again, now if there's a warrant that's signed by a judge, then the employer doesn't really have much to say. They're allowed in, but then as a client or a customer of the business, you can know your rights. You know you have the right to remain silent. And you know you can ask for an attorney. You do not have to disclose your name, your identity, and or your immigration status.
Thank you. That's a really good reminder for everyone. And that's the end of our questions. Is there any final information or thoughts you'd like to leave us with, Rupal?
I think that we have to really, keep our eyes in this space, find out, what's going on, right? And I do really believe that we should not approach any of this with a reactionary sort of outlook, but really try to get the facts and see what's on the ground, right? So if somebody was just coming in and hearing me go through these executive orders, like, oh my God, the world is falling, but let's take a look around and see what's really happening on the ground. And get that out to our communities and just provide support for them in whichever way we can.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for being so generous with your time and expertise today. Thank you to everyone who joined and listened and asked such thoughtful questions. We are together in this. There's a lot coming at us, but we're going to be rising to meet it. So please stay connected to us and reach out if you need anything. You are all the eyes and ears of our community, and it's incredibly important when we hear from you what's going on. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for going over time with us.
Thank you. Bye.